You mentioned EMDR. What is that?
That's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's an evidence-based treatment. It's, it's right up there with the other manualized approaches. And what the neat part is, based upon what we were finding and noticing in the literature and writing up these articles, it's depression, but it's also negative emotions. So, there's a questionnaire that directly sort of assesses negative emotions. And, a buddy and I, Jose Carbajal from Stephen F. Austin State University, him and I, we sort of got to talking, and we were like, well, if negative emotions are the problem child, well then, what the hell can we do about that?
Right. And
we found this questionnaire that looks at the negative emotions, and we sort of just said, well, hey, why don't we just target, the affect, the negative emotions itself, instead of,
trying to treat what's
exactly
right. It's like more root, I guess, more base.
Exactly. I mean, that's the way I view it.
Yeah.
And we've been able to sort of field and test that, and we found pretty good success. Now, if anybody out there in the audience is listening, really to take that to the next level, if there's any clinicians out there who are EMDR trained, I would love to meet with them, because since we don't have clinicians, I sort of have to go into the community and identify people who are, one, trained in it, but also competent.
Right.
And specifically for vets and first responders, because it's a very, very unique culture that people need to sort of have an understanding for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what exactly does EMDR entail? You said eye movement?
Well, right. So you can have bilateral stimulation. So it could be auditory, it could be with your eyes, it could be tactile. And the general idea is it's just doing what you do in REM sleep, and you're dreaming. The eyes go back and forth. So it's sort of just like an accelerated processing. For me, I always tell people it's sort of like therapy on steroids, because it gets to the deeper affect, the deeper emotion. And that's not to say it's any better than any of these other approaches.
Right.
That's just another tool that providers can use.
So is that hypnosis, or is it?
No, hypnosis would be when you offer sort of like a hypnotic suggestion,
right?
And you're sort of interjecting things into it. The neat thing about EMDR is they're doing the processing on their own. So what we did, we basically had them pair the negative emotion, with negative belief.
Yeah.
And the only wrinkle we did is what they've already, what they did from the beginning. Francine Shapiro's the one who started it, and she was looking at the eye movements, and she was putting whatever the traumatic event was. They sort of want like a still picture. Say, all right, pair that picture with the negative belief. And really all we did was come around the back and say, okay, well, what if we were to just pair the emotion with the belief? And we've had some pretty good success. And we published a paper in the EMDR journal, and it's the MDR journal for the International Association down in Austin. And that's my contribution, I guess, to the clinical relevance to sort of what we found. And when you and I first started, it's identify the problem, propose a solution, test it, and repeat. And that's the process that we're in right now.
Nice. So I'm trying to wrap my head around the process of, like, say, EMDR. So if I came into a session with a provider who was doing EMDR, what would they do? Like, run me through like the process of what that would look like, because you said it was like dreaming, but it's not, or like rapid eye movement.
Right. It's the rapid eye movements, and what the clinicians would propose is that you're not doing anything different than when you're asleep. All you're doing is you're awake. We're providing sort of like an on-ramp to the memory network itself. And it really operates under this assumption of the AIP model. It's like the accelerated information processing. And we're just sort of giving the client or the individual a nudge in the right direction. They're the ones doing the healing. They're the ones sort of going where the processing takes them. So like it's like a when you're bowling, like we were talking when I first got here, we got young kids.
Yeah.
When they go bowling, they throw gutter balls. So really what the clinicians are doing, they're putting those guardrails on there and they're not letting them sort of go in the gutter.
How are they putting the guardrails on? Like what, like if someone's doing like just basic talk therapy versus like EMDR, what's that look like in a session? Like what are you doing in an EMDR session?
Well, they both have guardrails. I mean, when you start doing this trauma-informed work or trauma-enforced processing, really the first thing you want to do is sort of help them down-regulate. So if they can't form like a safe place or if they can't sort of self-soothe, you want to address that before you hit the trauma. Because if you hit the trauma and they can't do that, they're going to decompensate like crazy. So you need to do a lot of front-loading. And with cognitive processing or some of these other manualized approaches, if you had 10 traumatic events in Iraq or as a police officer or something like that, then they want you to really pick the top one. And I understand the logic of it from a research standpoint. It sort of creates like a cascade effect. So you could probably group those 10, into like items, whether it's an emotion, guilt, or, whatever, you can group them. So if you hit one, maybe you've got 9 left, but all of a sudden you've got 6. And then you just repeat the process. The thing I love about EMDR is it makes a pretty exhaustive list of how things were, past events, present events, and how you want to be in the future. And to me, I think that's one of its biggest strengths is it does look at the holistic thing. You're gonna make a list of all the traumatic events that you've gone through. Just like anything else, it's gonna create like a cascade effect, but you still have to go through the process. So, if there's 10 events, now you've got 6 all of a sudden, then you just repeat. And with EMDR, the thing that sets it apart is, it's the heavy focus on the individual. Well, the theoretical assumption, of the AIP model basically is they go wherever they need to go. So the clinician, if the event is, getting blown up in Iraq or something, if they start talking about their most recent birthday, well, the provider, maybe there's some tie-in, but at the same time, maybe that's, completely unrelated. So that would be the guardrails of them coming back online.
I see. And the EM, you said eye movement. Does that mean when they're in a session, they're having them like blink, or what are they doing with their eyes that necessitates that name?
Sure. So when Francine Shapiro first started this, she labeled it EMDR. The story goes, she was walking through the park. She noticed, her eyes moving back, back and forth, and she felt a little bit calmer. So she was in a PhD English program. She completely shifted and moved to psychology. She recently passed, but you're going to make a whole list of the event. So you're going to do the self-soothing. You're going to make an exhaustive list. Then you're going to sort of have a collaborative discussion with the client as far as, okay, this is the list that we had. Where do we want to go? What's the method to the madness? So whether it's clinically or research, I'm not a fan of just sort of like floating around. There needs to be a very detailed plan of how to address things. So in the set when it first started, it was eye movements, and I think the first study was in '89, and it was on Vietnam veterans. I won't get on my soapbox, but we owe them a ton. And so it started with that, and then people came along the way, and they said, well, heck, if the eye movements do it, other, whether it's auditory or tactile, those will work. And
like a tick, some sort of thing that you do regularly, like where there's like tapping your hands or like.
Well, that's the neat part. So if you're a provider, you can, when you go through the training, they say, well, you can tap them on the knees, or you can sort of give them like some little nods that they can hold in their hands that sort of vibrate back and forth.
Okay. So basically like a constant stimulus of some sort that's physical. So that's like that's not stopping.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is why the treatment plan is so important.
Right. You could do some weird stuff.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it's neat because they're doing the healing on their own. Some of these other manualized approaches, it's very rigid. EMDR does have that, but it's a little bit, people have a little bit more creativity. They have more room to sort of, add their personal touch to it. So, when you're in a counseling session, you can, they're Neurotech, it's a company out of Colorado. They produce light bars. A clinician could sort of press a button and then this light bar sort of goes back and forth.
Oh, okay.
So that's similar. When it first started, they would sort of do eye movements like that. So I would say, hey, follow my fingers. But the thing that I would have you do would be, okay, the most traumatic image of getting blown up was, say, in the car wreck or something like that. And then I would pair the negative thought with that, and then I would sort of turn on the bilateral stimulation and let the client sort of go where they go. And that's what I like about it.
That's really cool because, like you said, there's more methods of transport that could work. Like you said, auditory as well. So you could have like two pulses of sound going.
Yeah, you have headphones that just go back and forth.
Binaural beats, kind of a thing. Like
roughly.
Yeah. Okay. What about strobe? Is it similar like the strobe too? Like strobes that kind of flash kind of thing, or?
So there are some approaches where if you had a light bar, sort of like just like a long rectangle. Well, there's little lights that sort of so when it goes left, it's time sync. There's also ones that it's just left right. Whereas some are they fully go left and right as opposed to just.
That's really interesting because like you said, it opens the door to a lot of different avenues for research and experimentation. Right. Guys, if you're liking the content, please chuck a like on the video, and also don't forget to subscribe. That really helps me with the algorithm to get this video viewed by more of you guys.